The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nicole Hennessy, Vice President of Music Biz. Welcome to our Common Ground webinar series. I'm happy to have with us today the gentleman from Vistex. We're going to be talking about the music data in the modern world. But before we do that, I want to take some time to go over a few quick association updates. Today, we put out a press release and a member announcement announcing 5 additions to our board of directors. Those additions include Bob Bruderman, Executive Vice President of Global Digital Partnerships at Cobalt Music Group, Ghazi, CEO and founder of Empire, Cameo Carlson, President of M Theory Nashville, Louis Posen, founder and president of Hopeless Records, and Lauren Witzer Seward, president of United Masters. So we welcome these 5 board members in addition to the 14 others who have served on our board for the past couple of years. The addition to the decision to add more members to the board, the goal there was to make sure that our board was as diverse as our membership and continue to serve all segments of the business. So we welcome our 5 new board members. If you want to view more about that press release and learn a little bit more about the members of the board, you can visit musicbiz.org. We have 2 big upcoming events, the first of which is Nylon Connect 2020, taking place January 16th and 17th at the Dream Hotel in New York. It's a high-level global music business development summit. We started Nylon a few years back when MIDEM vacated the January music industry calendar and moved their event to the June timeframe. We saw an opportunity to bring together key decision makers in the music business to talk about what was going to be happening in the business that year and to chart a course, make an agenda, and figure out how we can all work together to make the music industry a better place. So that event, again, January 16th and 17th in New York. If you haven't checked it out, it's nylonconnect.com. Our flagship annual event takes place in May. That's Music Biz 2020, May 11th through the 14th at the JW Marriott in Nashville. We just closed our call for presentations for that event, and the team here will be working over the next month to compile those submissions, accept submissions, and put together the program, the educational program for Music Biz 2020. So we'll be busy doing that over the next few weeks and have some great announcements about award winners and keynotes over the next coming weeks as well. So if you want to find out more about the annual flagship event, that's musicbiz2020.com, and you can find more information. Talking to the guys at Vistex here as we were preparing for this webinar, they will be in attendance at both of those events. So, a great time if you learn a lot from today's presentation to meet the gentleman face to face. And then we have one more webinar in our Common Ground webinar series that will be next week, and that will be Sync Tank. So for more information on that, again, if you go to musicbiz.org, under the events tab, you'll see the Common Ground webinar series page, and you can look at the webinars there. For those of you that are members and have logins to the website, you can log in to the website and view recorded past webinars anytime you would like. So members, log in. If you don't know your username and password, reach out to the office and we'll get that for you. With that said, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Vistex. There is a questions box on your screen. If you have questions for the presenters as they're going through, please do put your questions into that box and they'll be answered at the end of the presentation. So thank you both for being here today. Thank you all for attending, and we're going to put ourselves on mute here on this end and listen in as well.
All right, thank you for that introduction there. So my name is Ashish Pathak. I'm here with my colleague Dave Bagley. We're from Vistex, and we're hoping to discuss on this topic of music data in the modern world, how to get through, how to understand and deal with streaming, because I have to imagine the majority of our audience is dealing with streaming as a in their business capacity in some manner or another. So let's take a look at, we're going to divide this up into looking at a little bit of the history of what brought about streaming, where the music business sort of is at the state, and what are a lot of the issues. And then my colleague Dave will go into a lot of what solutions our company Vistex is able to provide towards these issues. So beginning with, let's take a look at the history of streaming data. Well, it all began with the internet, of course. In the early days of the internet, I don't know if anyone can recall back, but audio files were too large to be able to really send back and forth. I still recall the time when the internet first started, where if you wanted to listen to music, oftentimes people would have MIDI generators in their sound cards, their computers. So if you wanted to hear a version of your song, you'd hear this sort of cheesy little MIDI synthesizer song, and that's what constituted audio music back then, essentially. Next, when MP3s came around, this was a very big deal. This was a compression algorithm that compressed the audio enough where the size was much smaller, but the quality of enjoying the music was still enough for people, the general public, to really want this technology. So of course, MP3s, digital music files came about, and of course, this is leading to the birth of iTunes and the iStore, where one could purchase to download music files. So then Napster came along, and this was both a good and a bad thing. The good was in showcasing that a technology was out there, this peer-to-peer network sharing technology, where the distribution, the searching of music had become simplified greatly. And of course, the bad thing for everyone in the music industry was that it's piracy. And the music publishers, the record labels, the artists, and songwriters were not being fairly compensated for all their hard work. So what happens afterwards is bandwidth begins to increase on the internet. So now MP3s, having to upload, download them, is no longer constrained by live streaming. Now streaming begins, and at the time, YouTube, in its inception, no one really was seeing it as a primary source of music. Interestingly, I remember, again, the early days when I think people would edit a lot of fun videos, things of themselves, and that was being shared. And of course, we'll fast forward to the future here to the present, where it is the most primary source of music. But then also in the early days, Pandora came around. Now, Pandora was a more traditional model where it used terrestrial radio's model of broadcasting music, but simply over the internet. And then, of course, where we are today with Spotify. Now you have an infinite selection of music, and you have the ability on demand anytime to choose from a massive selection of genres. So this is where we are at essentially today with streaming. So let's now take a look at what is music data, at least as it pertains to our world and what it is we are looking to capture. So I have a slide up here. Don't worry about trying to decipher everything you're seeing here. This is simply meant to illustrate metadata. So the primary information for record labels to ascertain is what's called label copy. If you're not familiar with it, it's essentially what's derived from all the printed information. Originally, it was the printed information on the paper circular label of a vinyl record. Now, this has come to the point where we are dealing with metadata, which is data about the data. So essentially, a much more voluminous amount of data which can be captured. So things such as dates, you have your product information, important information such as ISRC codes, all the contributors, etc. All this information can now be captured. So this is all vital information available to be housed along with your basic data for your records, for your products. And of course, this is to be used to be exploited at some future point in connection with your products. Next, what's very important is sales data. Again, we're at a point where we can capture so much. Broken down, this is essentially looking at a detailed receipt where you have everything from the product information to its code to what its distribution channel was, to even what configuration it was bought in, whether it was a compact disc, whether it was a digital download, etc. Again, this is very important sales data. Being able to see who is purchasing your products, how it's being purchased, etc., allows you to be able to market and to later on use for analytics to be able to analyze and to determine where your money is best spent. And also, we have user activity. This is becoming increasingly important. We can see here in this version, this person's trying to capture things such as Facebook data. Do you have a Facebook, Amazon, Twitter ID, social media essentially? What's the location of the user? What's their age? Any extra information that can be extracted, which again, can go towards marketing efforts. We want to be able to capture here on the right-hand side, what you're seeing here is with streaming in particular, companies are now capturing, the DSPs are capturing the exact moment somebody was beginning to stream something, who that person was, and on what particular platform they were streaming this information. So, again, and how long they were playing it too. Again, all of this metadata is going towards the idea of capturing pertinent information to later on be utilized. So we mentioned YouTube, Pandora, and Spotify before. We took this snapshot here just to show you some of the many digital service providers that have either existed in the past. I haven't even gone through all of these icons to see who's still around or not, and new ones that'll pop up in the future. This is merely to illustrate that this is a major field. This is the future of our business. So it's not going away anytime soon. And trying to get the DSPs on board with what we as music publishers or as record labels or anyone else who wanting to utilize this data are trying to accomplish is very, very important. So now that we've discussed a lot of the background of streaming, let's talk about what are some of the benefits that we can see or where we're at. So I have a graph up here. I apologize if some of it's illegible. I'll go through it. Basically, this is a graph of 2017, 2018, how many on-demand audio streams happened in the fourth quarter in the US. And this is in billions, by the way. So looking at our first graph here, this is for subscribed audio streams. 2017, approximately 104 billion. 2017, yes. And 2018, we have 157 billion. Almost a 1/3 increase there. It's interesting to see that. You see here, ad-supported, which is essentially free, is much smaller. But that just shows the value people place on having this sort of service. The last graph here shows the overall increase, which is the combination. So again, it's very interesting to see that we're simply headed at least for the foreseeable future in an upward direction where it comes to audio streaming. This is a fun little graphic Dave and I found, just showing a bunch of icons, many different bands. If you recognize some, that's awesome. But this is mostly just meant to illustrate how much content it is. It's really incredible. I remember growing up having to find the right radio station or being able to borrow from the right friends the content I needed. But it's limitless. My son can right now just get on Spotify and listen to 30 different type of genres with a click of a button in less than 10 minutes. It's pretty amazing. So content is really all across the board. The ease of distribution is another major plus. So we're looking here at back when we began in the days of vinyl. Now, in the vinyl days, you have this physical product that could warp, that could break. That's why record labels incorporated breakage fees as such and reserves, not knowing what would last, what wouldn't. And you can see the slow movement here from these discs. I'm not even sure exactly what these kind of discs are here, to tapes, to the little floppy disks, our CDs, the iPod, and now onto our smart devices. So we've come from the world of physical distribution, having to wait a long time to be able to get your product in hand versus instantaneous ability to access it, which makes it so much easier on the record labels and the music publishers being able to provide content, as well as the end consumer being able to consume that content at any given time. Another interesting thing, which when doing the research for this, funnily enough, didn't really occur to me, but we came across this trend, is with the increase in audio streaming, piracy has decreased. And of course, it really honestly makes sense. Why on earth would you want to spend your time pirating, illegally sending MP3s up and down through the internet, when at a moment's notice for a subscription, a very reasonable fee, you can access anything you want? So that has been a positive side benefit of the music streaming industry. So now let's discuss some of the impacts streaming has had overall on the music industry. In this graphic, I'm going to take you through the numbers and the colors here. This is showing from approximately 2001 to 2018, last year, and this is all in billions again, what the revenues have been. In red, these are physical sales. Think of your good old CDs, tapes, etc. In dark blue, we have digital music, and in light blue, we have streaming. So we can see, starting at the turn of the century, we were at the millennium, turn of the millennium, we were strong with our physical sales. And then with digital, starting around 2004, 2005, it was starting to creep up. And in another graphic a little later on, this will also become clear why. And so we're seeing a steady increase here. Then around 2011-ish is where streaming starts to showcase itself, starts to come out much more forcefully. And we're seeing how the physical is steadily shrinking. The digital downloading is shrinking a little bit as well. At the streaming is where we're at currently, is just now on a very high upward climb. So this tends to indicate just how the industry in terms of physical sales have been affected. So with artists, in terms of their royalties, this is showing payments to music creators for 1,000 streams. We see that Apple Music is the highest at paying out to artists. Spotify comes in second, and YouTube comes in pretty low there. Now, it's just interesting to note, again, YouTube is actually the highest provider of content. So we're seeing a slight, well, now I'm being generous with my terminology here, but we're definitely seeing a difference in how artists are being compensated for their work. And so hopefully this is something that will be rectified with some of the various conversations that are happening, as well as what's going on with the Modernization Act too. We want to see this number change. We definitely want to see this compensation come up. Writers and publishers as well. They're not being as fairly compensated for their work, and you see Spotify and some other DSPs only paying some publishing. A lot of writers and publishers are still being unpaid. You know, YouTube, well, they say they're getting better, but they still have tons of unlicensed content. So again, as I touched on briefly earlier, the Music Modernization Act, thankfully, which has been passed, should hopefully see an increase in a more equitable resolution. We're definitely curious to see if with the mechanical licensing collective, with that passing, just how much easier it'll be for content providers, for DSPs, to be able to make it easy to get a mechanical license, to be able to license music, and how easy it will be for the publishers themselves to be able to register and get their music registered. So down the line, finally, the writers will be compensated fairly. Anyone listening in on this conversation, on this webinar, who's ever received a DSP royalty is sadly familiar with these kinds of numbers. It's pretty crazy the kind of microdecimal numbers you're dealing with. I remember we had a client one time, he was telling us about his utter frustrations. He said, you know, I've gone through 30 pages of a royalty statement and I barely made 5 cents. And that's just utterly frustrating having to deal with that. And of course, then you're dealing with things like rounding numbers and how to properly compensate, or when you set your payment thresholds. You know, none of us want to have to send a check out, which costs more in postage than the person would get in a royalty for some of these micropayments. So again, a growing concern. Obviously, everyone who's ever dealt with a computer has had a software challenge at some point or another. Your computers are just what they're machines, and they have issues. You know, constantly we're trying to figure out ways to get the computers to get the information we need with as little error as possible, both software and hardware challenges. But primarily in the software world, just being able to deal with a lot of this big data that's coming up. This is something that we have to be able to really face head on and just have work more efficiently for what it is we need to accomplish in our music business. So again, another chart here to show the physical world. Back with physical revenues in the 70s, you had your vinyl. And then we see a dip here in the 80s. Now, I think our best guess is this is probably when tape started coming into the fold. So people are able to start in their own early piracy ways, be able to create their own bootleg copies. But then overall physical sales keep increasing until early 2000, where we see the launch of Napster. And then we see a significant decrease here. And then the iTunes Store comes about, and of course this is the beginning of the rise of digital overall. So we just see the landscape shifting. We're all hoping to see either of these numbers, any of these numbers, just continually grow in this upward direction. Overall, for the music industry, and especially for all those music providers and music creators, this is healthy for the business to see it go in this direction. So I just wanted to leave with a couple of points here before I hand it over to my colleague. What are some of the solutions we think we need to have? Well, you know, it's important that we start getting better reports from the DSPs. If you currently receive a report, at least for most of our clients, they're constantly complaining about the fact that, well, we've got these massive spreadsheets that the DSPs are providing us with maybe a fraction of the information, the data being usable. So why can't they just filter it down to what we do want, what we do need. And I would like it, many of us would like it if the DSPs heard us and would be able to come to an understanding of being able to create proper reporting, proper available reports that can be utilized by the music industry. The Music Modernization Act, as I mentioned before, it's a great thing that it's passed. We're hoping to see movement in terms of, again, greater compensation for all sides involved. We don't want to send the DSPs out of business, but we want them to fairly compensate all the music businesses as well as the end writers and artists. Greater computing power. Well, it seems wasn't too long ago that the cloud didn't even really exist, and then now I think pretty much everyone's quite familiar with it. The ability to harness all of what's out there is going to be key in being able to bring effective solutions for computing all this data, all this metadata, everything that we can use to get our business ahead in the coming decades. And finally, compression and aggregation. This is something also Dave is going to show you more specifically, but being able to compress a 1,000,000-line Excel file to aggregate what we want out of it. If anyone out there is familiar with pivot tables, you know that this is a powerful way of sifting through tons and tons of data, so we can finally get to what it is that is really the information we need to see. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Dave. He's going to talk about Vistex's solution, the GTMS go-to-market suite, and all the technologies that are involved with the music industry. Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you very much, Ashish. Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Bagley, and I work at Vistex. And before Vistex, I worked at a company called Counterpoint, which was purchased by Vistex. And most of you are probably familiar with the Counterpoint products, Music Maestro and Record Maestro. They've been tried and true workhorses. They have processed millions and millions and millions of dollars for record labels and publishers and writers and artists. But with the issues that Ashish just described, they're just a little underpowered. They still work and they're still able to process streaming sales, but everything is just taking too long. So what we've done at Vistex is we've created the successor to Music Maestro and Record Maestro and our other products, and it's called GTMS, and it stands for Go-to-Market Suite. So what we wanted to solve with GTMS, there were a few things. Number one, we've got to get the processing time down. It doesn't make sense to process a 1,000,000-line statement that might be worth $25 or $50. If it takes somebody in the royalty department a week to deal with that spreadsheet, you're losing a lot of money. And sadly, that is happening right now in some companies. So we wanted to increase the processing power. And then, we also wanted to address a little, sort of the difference in the way that companies work. A lot of times you have companies with, staff that work at home. They may, they may work remotely, or they may travel a lot. It's not like the old days where everybody comes to the same office and they sit down at their desk and put their heads down and and crank away and do whatever they do. I mean, nowadays you might have a staff and they might live different states, that they might live all different kinds of places. So it's important to have a solution that's cloud-based. So all you need is an internet connection, which is readily available, and you need an internet browser, and then off you go, and you can do your work. So those were the two main things that we wanted to solve with GTMS. Some other things that we addressed, we also addressed the industry now is kind of, it's sort of a combination of publishing and the old record business in a lot of ways. Because everything is streaming, everything is kind of reduced down to the track level. So, the the concept of an album is still out there, and there are still physical sales, but more and more we're seeing our clients, more and more we're seeing our publishers who have sound recordings that they would like to make available on DSPs, and we see record labels who have publishing interests that they would like to exploit. So, in the past, what we've had is we've had clients that just have both of the systems, and they talk together fairly well, but they're not perfectly, connected. So they really are different systems. So with GTMS, we decided that we just wanted to have one big data stack, which has all of the publishing information that publishers need, and then of course it's got all of the agreement and recording information that record companies need. So you can use all, or you can use some of that information, but it's the same data stack and everybody uses the same thing. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some screenshots of GTMS, and I just wanted to say, so for anybody on the call, we can always schedule a full demo of GTMS and get hands-on and get live in the cloud. Okay. So this screen here is an example of a log-on screen. So if you work for a company and you have GTMS, depending on your role, you've customized this screen to with these tiles that you're looking at here. So if you got a lot of stuff to do and you work in a lot of different departments, you may have a lot of tiles. And if you're upper management, you may just have a couple. Maybe you just have sort of a dashboard, and maybe every now and then you like to to see what the total sales are. But this can all be customized, and you have security in back of it, so you can lock down areas that you don't want people to see. Maybe you've got intern logons where all they do is they go in and they work on products and sound recordings. Also on the tiles, you see that they're numbers. So those numbers will just kind of give you a peek at what's behind that tile. And then up in the very top left, you see that tile that says My Overview. So this is another user customization that each user can customize. And when you click on My Overview, then you get that. Then you get a user customizable dashboard. And depending on what you do, what you have to do day by day, you can have charts, you can have graphs, you can have pop-up warnings, all kinds of things like that. And then you can also have shortcuts to other parts of the system. So if I were organizing it, maybe I would have shortcuts to five different managers or screens in GTMS, and then maybe I'd want to look and see what the latest contracts are that have been entered, because those are the contracts that I need to go in. Maybe I need to approve them. All this kind of stuff can just sort of be seen at a glance and fully configurable. So once again, if you're upper management, this whole dashboard might just have a bunch of charts and graphs, and how did the cash register ring this week? What are our sales for the quarter? That kind of stuff. Okay. Okay. So this is just a quick snapshot of a streaming file. A lot of us have seen these. A lot of us have to deal with them. It's just amazing that Excel, even 10, 15 years ago had such a small limitation of rows, in the tens of thousands, and they're up to 1 million now with, and it's still not enough. And it's frustrating because, theoretically that information does need to be on a different row, but it's incredibly hard to analyze and time consuming. So what do we do about that? Okay. One of the things that we do about it with GTMS, aside from making the processing faster, is we allow the user to efficiently import the sales. So instead of having to go in and into Excel and maybe create a pivot table and try and compress them, or try and do compression outside of the system, in GTMS you have an import manager, and what you're looking at here is you're looking at activity on GTMS for a company, and you're seeing lots of things happen. So all of these files would have been uploaded at around the same time. You don't have to put them in a stack and upload one after another. And then from this page, you're able to see exactly what's happening. So you're getting, you have progress. You can see that this stuff is uploading. And then also you see a couple of icons that say overdue. So one of the things that GTMS can do is it can take care of some of the income tracking for you. So if you have sort of a spreadsheet where you check off, who's sent you a sales file for that month or that quarter, this is a little bit more sophisticated, and it's integrated into the system. So you could actually know that, oh, well, I don't have that iTunes file yet, so I can't kick off a calculation run. Maybe I need to shoot an email over to them and figure out where it is. So that's kind of nice. We don't currently have anything really like that in Record Maestro, so that's kind of a nice addition. And then up at the top, you can see you've got I've got 3 overdue sales files. I have one that's failed, and then one that's that's uploading right now. Okay, so this is just a slide that just kind of sort of takes you step by step on how you would queue up all of those files. So you've got an import monitor that might be down in your lower screen, and really you've got your folder with all of your files, and it's really just a matter of just selecting the DSP that the file came from, and then you're just dropping it into the folder, and GTMS does the rest. So, and then you just go ahead, start the import, and a lot of these files, as we've mentioned, I mean, they're incredibly large. A lot of them are at least 1 million lines, and sometimes they're 2 or 3 million lines. Maybe they've split it up over 3 or 4 or 5 worksheets, and they've given you this huge 20 megabyte Excel file. It's not a problem for GTMS. It works in the background, and then you're always able to go and see the progress on your dashboard. Okay, so success or failure once it's finished. And then this screen here, this is a view of a sales file, an interfaced sales file. And what we're able to do with this cloud-based solution is we're able to display a lot of information, without drilling down or without running any report or anything like that. So you can see up at the top, it's a sales file, and you're able to show the top products. So it's filtered through all of the millions of lines, and it's told you that these are the top products in there. What are the top territories, top distribution channels, configurations, and usage types. And if you're familiar with sales files, that may be enough to know that, oh, okay, well, I see that they've missed a territory. I see that this is only for US, so where's my rest of world sales? Those kinds of things. If you're practiced and if you've imported a lot of sales files for a particular DSP, that may be all you need to know that something's wrong, and then you can go and act on that. And then you've also got errors down on the left-hand side. You notice you've got that button that says "Fix this." So you don't have to go into the file. You don't have to do anything but click on that "Fix this," and it's going to take you to those lines where the territories are unrecognized. And right from that sales file, you can go ahead and fix those errors. So that's big time savings there. And because once again, you don't want to spend more than a second on an error row in a sales file if it's worth 5/10 thousandths of a cent. It just doesn't make any sense, and that's what people are doing now. All right, let me look at the next slide. Okay, so this is just a screenshot of all of the sales files that are in this in this sales window for this particular period. One thing to notice is if you look at the sales lines, they all say 16 or 13 sales lines. So those are just a couple of large test files that have just been run through this GTMS system of mine. Both of those sales files are actually over 1 million lines long. So in this particular test system, and my record label doesn't have a lot of products, so it looks like it probably has about 16 products or 13 products. But that's a great example of how easy it is to take a big sales file and compress it down to basically whatever you want. So let me just talk a little bit about what GTMS does compression-wise, because it's pretty incredible. So it actually does four main things. The first thing that it will do is it will compress, of course. When it compresses, you can choose what columns, what information you want to compress it on. Do you want to compress it on territory? Do you want to just compress it on the ISRC code, distribution channel? All of those things are configurable by the user. So a lot of times people will say, well, that's great if I compress it, but then what if I get audited? Here I've got this compressed file, and it doesn't really, it's not a representation of what I received from the DSP. GTMS actually will store both files, so it will store the original sales file in its pristine state, untouched state, but then for calculation and for anything else, it's going to compress it down for you. And of course, it's a lot easier to calculate on 16 lines than it is on 2 million lines, of course. Okay, so that's the first thing that it will do. The second thing that it will do is it will enrich the sales information. So if you have 2 million sales lines, and maybe they've only provided a total amount and a unit amount. A lot of times, depending on the agreement that you have to honor with a producer or an artist, maybe you need to have a per unit amount, or maybe you need to have a wholesale price, or you need to have a retail price. A lot of times those things aren't provided by the DSPs. In the old days, if you had 200 rows, no big deal. You just go into the sales file and you create a formula and you just make whatever column you need. But if it's a 2 million line sales file, I mean, that's a lot of processing. And once again, what are you doing? You're spending a whole bunch of time on a spreadsheet that might only be worth $50. Okay, so it will enrich the information as well. The third thing that it will do is it will make corrections for you. So and it will make different corrections. So if you have, for example, if they have a different product code than you have in your GTMS system, it will correct those. It will make corrections on territories, slight misspellings for titles, all of those types of things. When it makes those corrections and when you input and approve those corrections, the system will actually remember those automatically. So the next time you import that sales file, those corrections are already taken care of. Okay, and the fourth thing that the sales import will do is it will validate. And when it validates, it's not validating your royalty calculations to your royaltors, to your artists or producers or whoever, but it will actually validate your agreement with the DSP. And so this is something new. You're actually able to enter in the agreement details that you have with your DSP. So if you're supposed to get 75 cents for, well, actually that's too old now. We're talking about streams. However little you're supposed to get from your DSP per stream, you're able to put your agreement into the system. And when it imports that sales file, it will actually take a look and it'll say, okay, what agreement do I have with this DSP? How much am I supposed to get paid? Did they pay me what I'm supposed to get? So that's nice, because you think about it, that's pretty much impossible to do if you've got 2 million lines in your sales file. You're basically just trusting them, and you're taking the check and you're putting it in the bank. So that's kind of a nice new feature. Okay, this is a screenshot of one of those sales files, just opened up. So this is what most people would consider the sort of the header record for a sales file. And once again, when we double click on it, we're able to just get some top line information. What are the top tracks? What are the distribution channels? What are the errors that I have in the files? So you have that many rows in a sales file, you're bound to have some errors. You need to take care of the errors, but you don't want to hold up everybody else either. So you want to take care of them efficiently. So here you can see you've got an invalid ISRC, you've got an invalid label, an invalid UPC. Now those three errors, they might be on a large number of lines in the sales file, but it's not giving you 500,000 error lines to blow your mind. They're just saying these are three errors that you need to fix. If you fix these three errors, then your sales file's good to go in its compressed state. Okay, this is now over to the calculation manager of GTMS. So this is just a calculation that was done, and it's basically telling you what was successful and what wasn't successful. And again, if you're working through lots of sales files, millions and millions of lines, and you're working with a busy company, you're always going to have errors, and you're always going to be out of sync on which contracts are completed, what doesn't have rates yet. Maybe you have agreements that haven't been signed. But as a royalty analyst, you're able to get the work done that you can get done when you have all the information, and then the system is giving you nice, clear indications on how to fix the errors, and then get the rest of your work done. This is just another screenshot of that. So everything's done, but I still got just 3 errors to deal with, and then once you do that, then you can go home. Okay, and then once you do finish your calculation, the GTMS system, it works with our current offering, which is online statements. So this online statements portal is used by our Music Maestro and Record Maestro clients, and it actually runs on the same technology as GTMS. It sort of is GTMS already. So with all of our GTMS clients, the calculation results, they come just seamlessly over to the online statements portal. So this is kind of an example of what your portal splash page might look like. Your artists would log in. Of course, they have their own login. They have their own password. When they log in, the splash page will size, whether it's on a phone or an iPad or on a computer, and they're able to download their statement, of course, and they just get a quick view of what are my royalties, what's my period balance, and then they can do it from there. But then what we're also able to do with the online statements portal is we're able to give them some additional analysis information, and that's important because if you provide nowadays, if you provide an artist or a producer with a 500-page statement, like Ashish was talking about, it's incredibly complicated. It's hard to understand, and it's discouraging, especially when you get down to the final amount. So if you can offer some additional analysis, then it starts to look a little bit better. So you're aggregating all of that information, and and you're showing them what the big picture is. So you can show things like top products by royalty, top products by territory. These graphs are easy to deploy in the online statements portal through one of the GTMS tools. And then depending on what you've filtered or what you want to look at, as an artist or a producer, you could say, well, what did they pay me the first half of January versus first half of 2008, January, June to 2017 versus January, June to 2018. Things like that. And then if you have additional drill down information, it's just a really, really easy to use cloud-based portal. So if you highlight over things, it will drill down. when you put your artists and your producers and you put them onto the cloud, give them a login and a password. It's not extra work for you. Normally, you're not going to have to walk anybody through using the portal or anything like that. It's all very intuitive. And then, of course, they can also have pages where they can look at, full transactions. So if you're a business manager and you're dealing with a number of artists or a record label, or if you're dealing with a lot of different writers, if you're a publisher, you can go through and you can look at all of the total transactions rolled up. But then you can also drill down and look at them separately. And another thing about this portal is, if you're a record company, you're able to harness the analytics of the online portal as a record company. So what that means that you can import your 10 million lines of sales data, and you can create an account for yourself. You can create a group account for yourself that might encompass all of your joint venture deals, for example. And if you log in under that login, all of the reports, all the charts and the graphs, they'll be rolled up to include all of your joint venture deals. So it's just incredibly powerful, and it's something that that a cloud-based system like GTMS can do fairly easily. And boy, that's the last slide there. So let's see, just a couple of final thoughts that I wanted to talk about. I guess the two things for me are, the big thing that I'm seeing and that I've seen over the last 5 to 10 years working with our clients using traditional systems is just that they're spending too much time on their sales files and too much time calculating royalties. For some of our larger clients, it's just getting into it's taking a day or it's taking 2 days, and it's just not worth it if the million line sales file is only worth $50. So GTMS is a very good solution to that. And just a comment that I was thinking about, just to the stuff that Ashish showed you earlier. It's interesting that the trend now is to have access to stuff instead of own stuff. And the old record companies, you were selling stuff and people owned it and they put it in their collection. And that's just not the way it is anymore. Now everybody would just prefer to have access to it and not own it. So the industry needs to change with the times, and that's what GTMS is for. So with that, I think we turn it over to questions.
We hit on the questions.
Let's see. Now I have a link here. Okay. All right. So we have a few questions. Let's see. I'll take a few here. And we have them coming in. Okay, so one of the questions is it available now, and is there a cost associated to upgrade for Reaming users? Great question. Yes, it is available now. Our first rollout is on the record side, and that's for our Record Maestro clients. We saw that as the side that really needed a solution faster. So we are starting to roll it out. 2020 is when the first Record Maestro systems will roll out. There is a cost associated with it. So our earlier products were sort of software license based, and actually, just like I mentioned, it's all about access versus ownership in the 21st century. So the GTMS system, it's a software as a service. So it's just a monthly charge, and moving Record Maestro over to GTMS and the monthly charges, sizes, and things like that. That's something that we'd be happy to talk to anybody about. And then another question, once again, how does this integrate with existing music and Record Maestro systems? It's a little bit different animal, but of course the data that both of them need to keep is the same. So we've really tried to be mindful as we've created GTMS, and we realizing that it needs to be fairly simple for everybody to move across. So all of the systems are, have been created by us. So, we're going to be the best ones to migrate them over to GTMS. So, how difficult is it to integrate over? It kind of depends on a case-by-case basis, but, that's how it has to happen. And another thought, actually, just about with that question too, it's possible that some of the deals, at least in the short term, are going to be easier to calculate. So if you just have streaming income, do your contracts with your artists and your producers need to be so complicated? Do you need, well, you obviously don't need packaging deductions, but a lot of the different deal points that you used to have in contracts, if these things got simplified, then it's entirely possible that you might say, I've got my Record Maestro system, and I'm just going to leave it for for the little bit of physical business that I do, and everything else is all going to GTMS. And your Record Maestro system might just sort of end up being your archive system. And every quarter you might go to it less and less until you don't go to it anymore. So that's entirely possible. Let's see. And then we have questions about pricing. And I also get a list of these questions with who asked the question at the end of this webinar, and I would be happy to reach out to everybody personally. So if you have questions about the product, or if you want your own, your own demonstration, anything like that, I'll make a point of reaching out to everybody. And I think we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I might go back and turn it over to the host. Ashish, do you have any final thoughts?
No, pretty much Dave covered it all. I think we can see by the questions a lot of our, the people are users, the Record Maestro, Music Maestro, and and to know that we do have industry knowledge. We're always listening to you, as Dave said. Doors open. Let's, we're hearing you out. We're putting all those 20+ years of experience with the music industry and no one else has that kind of backing. So, we're going in to GTMS with all this knowledge and all this ability to create what it is that you're going to need in the future. And with that, we'll hand it over to the presenters.
Thank you so very much. Lots of very in-depth information here. So thank you for sharing that. I see a lot of questions coming in, so I think everybody here has got some great insights this afternoon. So we thank you for sharing those. And as was just mentioned, I will be sharing these questions with the Vistex team, and they can follow up with you one-on-one. So thank you all for being here today. We greatly appreciate your time to be here with Music Biz and Vistex, and we hope to see you all again on the webinar series shortly. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.